the Committee of the Whole of the City Council, City Homestead, Tuesday, March 14, 2006, right at 5:30 p.m. Present this evening, we have Councilwoman Linda Bell, Vice Mayor Losner, Councilwoman Judy Wallman. Do we know the presence of the others to put anything on the record at this time?
They're in the building.
They're all in the building? They're all in the building. Good. Item 2A is the February 21st, 2006 special COW minutes. A motion for approval?
I'll move them, Mayor.
Moved by Councilwoman Bell. Is there a second? Second by Vice Mayor Losner. Any comments on the February 21st minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? February 21st, 2006 minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move them.
Moved by Councilwoman Bell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Wallman. Any comments on the minutes? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 2C on the tab 3 is the amendment of the City Code, Section 10 through 18, early voting and ordinance.
Mr. Mayor and Council, basically the purpose of this amendment is to revise and update our current ordinance in regards to the provisions of the scope of applicability, early voting duration and hours, and to opt out of new requirements of paragraph 2 of Florida Statutes 101.657. Basically, we've changed to where any city election, early voting shall be provided only on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday immediately before the city election. And that will be limited to 8 hours each weekday and an aggregate of 8 hours on the weekends, like 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. The City Council, this allows the City Council, if you want to change this or alter it, gives you flexibility by resolution. You can alter what you're setting up in this ordinance. Now, the state had come down requiring the county, as I understand it, to have a lot more effort put into these early votings, and where every day you have to report electronic data provided for each day. It's extra cost and burden. So they even recommend that municipalities opt out of this. So, yeah, Sheila, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You pretty much covered it. It's just giving us the flexibility of not having to adhere to the mandate by the state without the funds to.
The other thing that it does, I think, is when we originally passed our own version of the early voting, we had it applied to mayor and council elections. And this one would extend the applicability if we have a charter election or some other interim election. Really, the two things, the critical things are, one, it extends it to all elections in the city, and number two, it opts out of those onerous provisions that were put in by state law that requires extra reporting by the supervisor of elections.
Mayor, let me ask the Vice Mayor, is this something the charter we could look at, or should we move forward on this? I don't.
We should probably do both. There's probably some deadlines.
I think that you should move forward with it, because if you don't move forward with it and opt out of the state provisions, then it's going to cost money, and it really doesn't.
Mayor, Richard, the question I have talks about for any city election which are not held in conjunction with a county or state. If our election falls on the same day as a county or state, what are our obligations or not to have early voting?
We're going to go into the same early voting as either the county or the state elections.
Which could be far in excess of what we're providing for here.
Yes.
Can we opt out of that?
No. No. No, if they're having a state election, that's going to be governed by the state law. If they're going to have a county election, they're going to be governed by the county law. This is just only for the elections that we control.
Okay. So there could be some big expense when they fall in the same years as other elections.
Yep.
For early voting. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Now, yeah.
Ms. Wallman?
If this is passed, if we see a need to go in and change anything, can we still do that?
Right, there's a provision there that says, for instance, if the Thursday, Friday, Saturday fall on a holiday or something, there's a provision in the ordinance that allows the council by vote to change either the hours or the days for any particular election.
So, because, I mean, I've talked to several ministers in town, and they were asking me about Sunday afternoons, and I just didn't know whether it specifically says Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Right, it specifically says Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Because we had a discussion about that point when we set the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and the religious concerns were taken into account at that time.
And it's so ironic that it's the ministers that came to me and said, we would like to have voting on Sunday afternoons.
And so there's nothing that prohibits you from having it on Sunday for a particular election if you feel like that's the right thing to do. But this sets it at Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Education Committee, Councilwoman Bill.
Yes. This is support for Miami-Dade County Public Schools legislative initiative, and this is a recommendation from Miami-Dade County Public Schools has asked the city to support its legislative initiative with the Florida legislature, and we all have received those packets earlier. I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Steve Rosner, and it's seconded. Any comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the ayes carry.
Item 4 is Parks and Rec Committee, Councilwoman Woolman.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'm going to turn this over probably to John. John, are you the one? It's pretty simple, but then I'll turn it over to you.
The first item is amendment to professional services agreement with Brumillo, Agemo, and Partners for the Whitcott Park project for architecture and engineering services. Last spring, we entered into a master plan construction drawings agreement with them for the design of Whitcott Park. At that time, we had stated as a project basically for a budget what we had in funding. That was $200,000 SMP dollars and $200,000 FERDAP for a total project of $400,000. As the design went on, using the park master plan as a guide, we shaped that park into what the community needed, and the project then grew. The total project grew, which now has the dog park, which now has a restroom, office facility, has some extended lighting and plumbing needs now. So the budget has increased, so their scope of services has increased, so their fee in line is increasing as well as a result of our extending the scope of services we requested from them.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Mayor Warren, seconded by Jeff Porter. Councilman Porter, I'm sorry.
Either way.
Any comments or questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the tab number 6, the J.D. Red Park Tennis Court resurfacing. As you can read in your package, to our knowledge, the courts have never been resurfaced, right, John? And we feel it's time.
I can't speak to the history before.
But to our knowledge.
Not that we're aware of.
To our knowledge, it's never been resurfaced. So, do you want to go ahead and elaborate just a little bit about that, John?
Yes, the J.D. Red tennis courts are highly used throughout the day. Mornings are filled with snowbirds, especially in the evenings with community members, and they're in much need of resurfacing. The cracks be filled in to have the appropriate court surfacing redone on those. It's a multiple coat system, and we went out. We searched for 3 quotes, and McCourt resurfacing came in as the lowest bidder, and we're recommending that we move forward with putting that requisition in and getting that work done.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Warren and seconded by Councilman Porter. Any questions?
Just one question. John, in the past, I think we used to have a problem with fungus growing. I guess it used to be a lot of shade. You've got trees on the one side of the tennis court. Can we keep those down, or will the new surface be resistant to some sort of fungus or mold? Because I remember that being a real problem.
The new surface will be certainly more resistant just because the porousness of it and the coating. However, it does need regular maintenance, pressure washing to help keep that growth down. So along with the redoing the surfacing, a maintenance program will also be in where we do periodic pressure washing to keep that in control.
Okay, thank you.
And if I might add, those courts are used every day. I mean, they really are, and they're used at night. And I know Kurt Heron and I were talking the other day about a school that we even let use. What's the name of their, is it Southgate or Homestead? Campbell Drive Middle School. And they have tournaments there, so we're doing much more improvement than just this resurfacing. But I'm glad that the motion's been made and seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda.
Councilman Wallman?
Yes.
I think we had a question in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry.
33,290 is the expenditure. 8.
I thought that was a very fair price.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I was very surprised. Next item on the agenda is the South Florida Water Management District grant applications. And again, I'll turn it over to John.
Okay, we're applying for two grants under the same program, one for the Harris Restroom Project and one for the Senior Center Expansion Project. So, South Florida Water Management District is offering assistance and funding for water conservation. We're implementing into both projects waterless urinals that were similar to these at Dolphin Stadium, infrared faucets, infrared flushing mechanisms, all of which will result in a significant decrease in water consumption. So because of what we're putting in the project that meets the requirements of this grant program, so we're applying to search for funding.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second motion.
May I make a comment, please? I'd just like to make a comment that Shannon from our Parks and Recreation Department did write these grants, and she's been very aggressive in pursuing dollars for the Parks Department. So I'd like to just give Shannon some recognition for the grant writing.
Shannon's back there behind John. You can't see her. There she is. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
You've done a really good job, too, throughout the last grant application, so we really appreciate that. I believe Councilwoman Bell made the motion and Mayor Warren seconded the motion. All in favor, or excuse me, any other comments or questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on my agenda is the Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs Community Grant and Tourism Development Council grant programs. We're starting already to work towards our 4th of July celebration. And Marlene, do you want to talk about this? Or John, do you want to talk about the grants? It's pretty simple.
Here again, Shannon has written some grants to cover our July 4th celebration at the stadium. We were fortunate last year to receive 2 grants, one in the amount of a little over $4,200 and the other for $4,500. And as these grants are shown, we're going in this year for $10,000 and $15,000. Again, we hope to put on a very successful July 4th. Our star attraction is going to be Jimmy Buffett imitation.
Imposter Jimmy
What is it? Tribute. Tribute. It will be.
Is Elvis coming to?
Yeah, no. Elvis was last year.
It's like
Jimmy Buffett.
Elvis. One of these days, folks, we're going to have the real thing. But those of you that have the paper in front of you see that it is a one-to-one match. However, those matches can be done through in-kind and sponsorships. So I don't think there's any
Move the
problem with
recommendation.
that. Moved by Mayor Warren, seconded by Councilwoman Gardner. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Utility Committee, Councilman Norman Hodge.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
I have generator rewind and repair for units number 19 and number 9. I would defer to Mr. Greg Paulson. Yes, sir, Mr. Hodges. The repair of generator 19 and 9 is important to get that online this summer. The number 9 was damaged during the storms last year, so FEMA is going to be reimbursing some of that expense. And then 19 also had a winding short around the same time. A portion of that is covered by insurance. So
Move the recommendation.
Second. I got a first by Mayor Warren and a second by Councilman Porter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next on the agenda, I have amending the City Code Section 28-256, street lighting and rental outdoor lighting rates. Mr. Paulson. Yes, sir. In review of this city code, I looked for some administrative issues that weren't being addressed, and also in regards to the new developments having private lighting and wanting us to enter into an agreement with the homeowners association to maintain those lights. We don't have any policy for that, so in reviewing the lighting policy in the city code, we want to add onto that policy a program, a service agreement with the homeowners associations to maintain their lights. And there's different levels of service agreement. One is just for the energy, and they'd be responsible for the infrastructure. Level 2 level of service would be for the energy and for maintenance, which would mean replacing the bulbs and the photocells. And then the level 3 would be us replacing the fixtures or the poles if they're damaged. Also, we reviewed the rates for all the lighting throughout the city. That's our security lighting, public roadway lighting, and the private area lighting, which is the new amendment that I'm requesting. We increased the rates for all those rentals based on the increased cost of material and labor. It's not impacting the rate for the energy, just for the maintenance of the lights. And this also is an attempt to fund, in my strategic plan, to create a division within the department. Actually, it's going to be part of the transmission and distribution division, a lighting and service division that will be dedicated to making sure the lights stay on, street lights, and also new services. And this is going to help fund that. Great. I think that answers some of our past questions.
I'll move it with a question.
I'll second it.
Question. Mr. Paulson, when were the rates adjusted previously? Do you have any idea when they
have not been. As far as the street lighting rates, I have no records of the rates ever being adjusted.
Okay. And then obviously there's new circumstances in here that have never been addressed from the homeowners association, but some of the rentals I saw in there had been increased that you have no idea where that threshold was set.
No, I don't. All I can do is compare what it costs us now to maintain the lights and then adjust the rates based on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to add something here. Going back when we start talking about these new developments and what their responsibilities are, and we revised the ordinance somewhere in chapter 30 where we said they're responsible for certain improvements and they have to have a special taxing district and issues like this. And some of the improvements are street lights, and we gave them the option to have the street lights completely private, or they could enter into the city of Homestead for a maintenance and also energy agreement, or the practically similar to rental lights agreement. And we had that whole link, but there was a missing thing there, which is if they requested, we didn't have the agreement in place. And this is exactly what Craig is doing. He's practically closing the loop, because he started receiving requests from them to enter into these agreements. And actually, this is something they welcome.
I think it's very fair that you give them options of levels of service. That way, they can spend as much or as little as they choose based on the vote from the homeowners association.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. From what I see from the historical information in the code, the most recent this could have been amended was 91.
91?
It says 2001, but I'm sorry, 2001, and then prior to that it was 1995. It doesn't say which sections were amended, but that's when the last time this ordinance was touched, 2001.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I have a first by Councilman Porter, second by Mayor Warren. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I think it's very innovative and a great idea. Last and final on my agenda is amending City Code Section 28320, line extension policies and procedures. Mr. Paulson.
Yes, sir, Mr. Councilman. We have a policy in place now called the contribution to native construction, which is a formula that is applied based on the cost of construction, the cost of projected revenues from the new services resulting from the construction, and the cost of fuel to provide that energy. The problem with the formula is that we don't know what the cost of fuel is. We really can't predict over time what our cost of fuel is going to be with any certainty. And so what I propose is, rather than having a formula, have a flat rate fee, which I'm familiar with at other utilities. And this fee is just to cover the cost of labor. The type of growth that's going on in Homestead right now, all of my resources are geared towards new construction. So basically, I am providing construction services for the developers and unable to allocate a lot of resources to maintenance and operation of the system, the existing system. So in order to cover the cost of that labor, just the cost of labor, I'm proposing that we charge the developers fees per units as shown in the primary fee schedule. $250 for a single-family home, $200 for a multi-family structure, and then 50% of the cost of the construction for development of commercial industrial complexes. How do I come up with these fees? What we have done historically through my history, and also here at Homestead, we have developed, as we build existing communities, the electrical infrastructure. I track all those costs and then divide them up, basically. I track the cost of the equipment, the materials, and the labor, and just break out the labor costs and divide that up between the number of units in the development. And it ranges anywhere from $2.25 for a single-family home, for instance, all the way up to $300 for the cost of just the labor. There's no charge. Obviously, we own the equipment. That's the cable, the transformers, and the switches. We absorb that cost. So this is a cost to the developer just to support our labor.
Question, Mr. Hodge?
Question?
When would this be in effect, if it passes?
I assume as soon as the council's approved it, we would make it effective immediately.
Would it be for anything that hasn't broken ground?
It would be for any new developments coming into engineering. Developments that have already been received into engineering and designed and submitted for construction. I wouldn't be retroactive, in other words. So it would be new developments coming in. I would like to make it that way. I don't really think that's fair at this point. It could be, though, because we already have the CIAC in the city code, but it's not being administered. So technically, we should have been charging the developer all along based on the formula, the CIAC formula, for every development that's being built.
Since I've broached the subject, then, is it possible, Mr. Attorney, to go back and apply this?
What we probably do is, first we can look at it, yes, and we apply the contribution in aid of construction that was in effect at the time that they pulled their permit, and see if we can apply that to it. But we should go back and look at that and see if there's some...
Yes, we could have a look at that. Yes.
Because the way I look at it is that, we're approaching close to our build-out, and if there's a lot of things that have passed through planning and zoning that if we could apply this, it would certainly make a difference, a huge difference.
Well, we could certainly give that a try. In my mind, we should. Yes, we should. Now, how difficult that's going to be as far as interfacing with the developers, that's a different story. So.
We're up for the challenge, I think. Thank you, Mr. Hodge.
Mr. Hodge?
Yes, ma'am.
And to piggyback on that, that was my question exactly, and you hit on it, Greg. At what point does it go to engineering?
Right.
Because I think if we've got the option to take it all, for those that maybe have already gone to engineering, to collect it prior to the issuance of a CO. Just because a subdivision is approved doesn't mean it's hit his engineering point yet. Let's face it, it's a pass-through to the buyer. The developers aren't paying that cost. So I guess, to help us kind of conceptualize who's in and who's out, when does a project hit you?
It's at different times, but, after it's gone through the planning and zoning, we receive...
Sometime after final development approval.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But, for some of those that have already passed that point, I guess the question of the attorneys is conceivably, if you want a CO for this unit to close on,
right,
you're going to pay something.
Sure. And if the CO hasn't been issued, we have some leverage there. I mean, basically you're talking about backbilling, not backbilling, but it's kind of like backbilling for a service we provided before you issue the CFO.
No, certainly all of the construction purchase contracts I've seen certainly give the builder the ability to go at closing to the buyer and nickel and dime them to death. I mean, I don't mean to trivialize.
Happens all
maybe $1,000 a unit, $500 a unit, but anything that's above and beyond is piled on to the buyer.
But the standard that's in the current code prior to being amended is that we can ask for a contribution in aid of construction where the potential revenues do not justify the full cost of the extension. That's the standard that's in our current code. So we'd have to look at those developments to see whether the potential revenues would justify the full cost of the extension. To the extent they're not.
There's no amortization period in there within a certain number of years?
Nope.
Wow.
And there lies the real difficulty in that you're looking at the projected revenues from the sale of energy and also the projected cost of fuel to produce that energy.
Which is impossible to forecast.
Well, we have the formula it's a mathematical formula that's in here, and FC, the estimated annual fuel cost, is one variable, and the other one is the estimated annual revenues, including demand charges were applicable. So there's two different variables in the formula.
Okay.
Mr. Hodge? Yeah.
Just for some follow-up, also related to this is there's some fees written in the city code that haven't been administered, and we are beginning to administer those fees right now, just for your information. One is an application fee when the drawings come to us for application for service is basically what we're talking about for new development. There's a $50 charge for an application fee, and then there's some charges associated with the production of the drawings back to the developer, and then also the inspections of the work that the developer is doing. They're installing the conduit infrastructure, and then we go out and inspect that work. And there's costs that are to the developer for those inspections. And all these things are new that we just started implementing over the past month, just for your information. And this is also related to that. This is how this has come about. I've reviewed the city code and looked at all the things that we're supposed to be administering, the fees we're supposed to be administering, and this primary fee or contribution aid to construction is one of them. And it's the biggest portion, so it won't have the biggest impact.
Mr. Hodge, who would have been tasked with administering those fees that were already in place?
And one other comment, we have under the primary fees on page 3, it says $250 for each single-family home. We want to insert the word detached single-family home in there. It'll be in the next revision. And was there a question? No?
Yeah. My question was, what department, what division, what position would have been tasked with making sure that we were collecting the fees that I guess you, in your new tenure here, discovered were not being collected?
Right. Well, I'm not really, I couldn't say right now where that responsibility will fall. Technically, it's an engineering function. So at the lowest level, it should be the engineering superintendent, I believe, would be the one that would make sure all the codes are being enforced.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of the thousands of homes that have been built and occupied since 2001 times $500 a unit is not an insignificant amount of money.
It is a large amount of money, and all that is our labor dollars. So our line crews are doing new construction and at our cost. And really they're there to maintain the system, operate and maintain the system. New construction needs to be funded a different way. We've been building out of an operating expense, and that's not really the proper way to do it. So we're trying to recoup the cost of construction, and what I anticipate doing is, if the construction continues to go the way it is, I'm going to relieve my crews from that construction so they can operate and maintain the system, and then fund a contractor to do the type of new construction.
Mike,
I have, well, we'll go ahead and let Mike speak. After that, I have Mr. Porter, Mr. Powell, and then Councilwoman Bell.
Mr. Chairman, council members, just to add something, if you recall when we went through the extension for the racetrack, this came in front of you and we asked them for some contribution and practically a guarantee that they were going to meet the revenue projections under the old formula. And frankly speaking, that was the only time we dealt with it, or it came to our attention. It was, Mr. Basner, you were the chairman, we discussed it. It was extremely confusing, the formula. And when Greg came here and found it in the code, it was confusing to him, and it's his business. And he said there was a way to simplify it and easily implement it. So he came up with this recommendation, which, we think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Paulson, in the impact fee, this is obviously going to create an impact to the system, not just for new construction, but there's impacts to the system as far as we find ourselves building new substations or having to possibly increase generation. That question is still out there. Why is this different from an impact fee, or is it really an impact fee? Because when you talk about new construction, I'm a little confused on, I think of new construction as hanging a whole series of poles and wires out, another mile, and then people can connect to it, theoretically. Do you get every house that way, or will you be able to do it accordingly?
Okay, I guess there was 3 questions in there.
I'm sorry. I'm struggling to try to figure out the difference between this and wrapping it into an impact fee. Like, we charge so many cents a square foot for police, so many cents a square foot for Parks and Rec, because the impact isn't a one-time impact, it's an impact over time.
I understand. And the answer is yes and no. Is it an impact fee? A lot of cities do apply an impact fee, and more recently some cities have just enacted impact fees on their utility infrastructures. I wouldn't classify this as an impact fee because all I'm trying to do is to recover the cost of the labor. I'm not trying to recover the cost of the equipment and the materials to install it, just the cost of the labor. So in that essence, it's not an impact fee.
No, we've talked about it in some visioning sessions in the past, and I think it's fabulous that it's finally, come around. I kind of have to agree with some of my colleagues. It's almost like the horse is out of the barn. Now let's shut the door. So, but I'm in favor of it. I'm gladly appreciative of you bringing it forward.
Well, it's a difficult thing to do because the fact that the CIAC hasn't been administered, except for the one instance that I'm familiar with, that Mike has told you about, and this is not new to me. I mean, it's similar across the board in the state of Florida, and all over any public entity has a similar policy. Some people do the formula, real similar to this formula. Some people have devised a flat rate. The benefits of the flat rate are it's easy, it's simple, it's straightforward. The benefits of the formula are the only benefits in the formula are that you might get more back than what you anticipated, or you might not get it. That's not a benefit. You might lose on the deal. It depends on how good you are projecting the cost of fuel and the cost of energy. And the way it is now, who can project the cost of fuel? If I did project the cost of fuel, it would definitely be an overestimation. I'd project real high, and that would undoubtedly increase these amounts. But I am real familiar with how you can construct infrastructure for development. I know what it costs. I know what labor it takes. And so that's a given. It's not so many variables involved there. We can track the cost of new construction. We can track the cost of labor, and we know what the labor charges are per service.
That's it, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Powell.
Ed Powell, 2274 Southeast 27th Drive in Homestead. Councilman Porter kind of stole my thunder. My question was impact fees and where it was different and why it wasn't, it was part of infrastructure and why it wasn't already in the impact fees. And we all know that recently there was quite a substantial increase in those impact fees that we hadn't renewed in a few years. So my question is, should we bury that expense now into those impact fees, or should we carry it as a separate item as far as not being an impact fee?
I'd take a stab out of that as a separate item. I mean, we had, in the impact fees, we just, when we came up with that amount, we had a study from a consultant to come in and determine the impacts to the community in terms of transportation, police, and parks. And actually, the impact fee we're charging now, we could have charged when he first did the study, because that's what he said we should have been charging. But it was such a jump that we only went about halfway, and then from there we've increased it to the ceiling. So at that point, electric utility infrastructure is not included in that. That's kind of an enterprise fund that runs on its own and collects its own money. Mike, you have something?
Mayor, council members, I just want to add another clarification. The impact fees we're talking about, or the gentleman asked about, building impact fees really affect services. They do not affect enterprise. Any enterprise or utility we have, when we did our impact fees with consultation with our tenant consultant, you cannot recover it from impact fees because it's recovered through the enterprise fees, which sometimes includes enterprise impact fees, but not impact fees on services. And when Greg explained, answer Mr. Porter earlier, this fee is purely, think of it as cost recovery for our labor. But also it's my understanding there is customary in some instances where there is an impact fee related to infrastructure for the electric utility. Of course, we have it for water and sewers, and this is something we looked at in the past, and maybe I think Greg will be looking at it further for just impact fee for electric utility.
Okay, great. And just one question, Ms. Bell, before you go. I just have one quick question. Is there an estimated annual cost savings to the city that you have for us?
Well, cost savings, actually, it's obviously an increase in revenue to the city, but it's covering the cost of the labor, so technically it's a wash. That's the impact. I mean, we're just using this money to cover the cost of the labor. Either it's our folks doing it now, or we contract it out and relieve our folks to do maintenance on the existing system.
So, but even looking at it in that aspect, that's still money that we're now putting out that we wouldn't be coming out of.
That is true. Yes.
Okay. What's that number? Do you have an idea?
Oh, you want to know what the number is?
Yeah.
Okay. It's $250 per single family home. It depends on the number of units that we're building, which are in the thousands. I guesstimated at the present rate of growth that we're experiencing right now, it's anywhere towards $750,000 a year. Could potentially have that, and I'm talking about all the fees. That's the application fee, the design fee, and this primary fees.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Hodge. Finally, being on his left does not get my questions answered any sooner. I was going to ask the question actually that Vice Mayor Losner, and I guess it's just another glaring example of a bit of a missed opportunity, and I'm really, really very pleased that we're cleaning this up and cleaning up basically some of these items that need to be cleaned up. And I think the bottom line is that we're removing a very confusing formula and we're replacing it with just a basic per unit fee, and I think that makes a lot of sense. and I understand it as to be pure cost recovery. And even though it's a wash, it's just, you know, I know hindsight's 20/20, but there's other areas that I bet that as we get, you know, as your position is clarified and you come in here, you're basically cleaning this up. I think we're going to see this in many other areas of the city, especially as the internal auditor position comes on board. This is what brought to my mind that we need to make sure that the policies that are there that are properly implemented, and that if there is a cost recovery method available, we need to take advantage of that for the city. And that the bottom line is it benefits all the taxpayers of Homestead. So I see this as very, very good, and I think that we're going to see more of this as we look into the code and as we clean this up. I guess I would call it a cleanup. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Very welcome. My pleasure.
Mr. Pilson, I just wanted to say that from now on, when we have projects come before us, I would like to have a map showing whether or not it's in our service area or not, because there's many times, you know, and the public's sitting here thinking all these houses, but it's only in our service area, correct? That you can apply this application?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it has to be in our service area.
So, you know, I'm not even sure east of the highway what areas would affect us or not, because FPNL services so many of those areas, correct?
That's a very good point. Out east, the theoretical, actually, it turns out to be 308th Street is our northern boundary out that far east. So many of the Waterstone that we think we would not be in. Actually, what's beginning to be built now is really more in our area. And I just wanted to add that was a good catch by Greg. As you know, we've had a minimum of 2 revenue and expense committees doing just what we're talking about here, going over, looking at revenues, and we picked up a lot over the years, but this was one buried in there that just wasn't picked up through both, and we had representatives from all the departments on those revenue and expense teams, so it was a good catch by Greg, I had to add.
I'm sorry.
Well, it actually wasn't lucky. I mean, 2 other cities that I worked for in the past had the same issues, the same thing. It's like deja vu. I don't think I'm really in Homestead. I'm at my other job because it's, you know, every city is experiencing similar problems. So it's not like we missed anything or something special or unique to Homestead.
Well, you're still to be complimented for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
I thank you. But I also wanted to say that before this goes too much further, I'd really like for us, for the city attorney, management, and the utilities department to really make sure the people know whether or not they're going to be affected if they've already gone through certain process. Because I can see this auditorium being, this chamber being filled with lobbyists, you know, fighting us, and I want to make sure that we stand strong and we are going to support this if it's voted on at the council meeting, and we know. So that issue that I brought up earlier, you know, I hate to use the word pipeline, but where in the pipeline does that cutoff time occur? So that's something I think it needs to go back and be studied a little bit.
We'll do that, but I don't know if there's any legal, it might be more difficult to collect, but if there's any legal demarcation there where we can't go back, especially the ones that are still there and bill.
That haven't sold.
Yeah, that haven't sold.
Based on...
Thank you, Mr.
Based on what Ms. Wallman was saying, that necessarily would be handled as a separate issue, because we would, obviously...
This needs to go into place.
Yeah, this needs to go into place, and then we handle that as a separate issue, when to when not to bring. So at least we have this on the books, and then we can work with whether we need to go back.
But in the event we do go back, we use the old CAIC methodology that was in place at that time.
I think that's where we're going to end up, but we're going to go back through it and see. I think it's also a matter of how much money is out there and how much effort we want to put into it. But I think the first step is to see whether we have the possibility of doing it, and then maybe the staff can do some calculations on how much money we're talking about and what it will take to get it. A lot of this would have to recover from the developer. Some of the developers may or may not be around anymore. But I've already made a note. We'll start to look at it with the...
I have one other comment. Also, we're going to take every effort to communicate to the developers in advance of what the policies are. May have not done a very good job in that in the past, but our plan is to provide to a developer with, when he makes application for service, a copy of the Homestead Energy Services policy, which discuss all this, and then also a copy of the city code regarding these fees and everything. So they'll know up front before they get too far ahead, before they apply for a CO, that they owe these fees. So that's our plan.
Councilman Hodge, I think that it's easy to key on to the dollars and cents issues, but I know back before the hurricanes of last summer, I was hearing from the line crews that, I think some of the real issues that we have is that they were spending above and beyond full time doing new installation rather than going back into the established areas and having the time to maintain and repair the existing portion of the system. And this is going to allow us to bring in independent contractors to do the new construction so that our crews can maintain what we have already in place.
And that is exactly right. That is exactly right. The operation and maintenance of the system should come out of existing revenues from the ratepayers. Any addition to the system, expansion of the system, either comes from impact fees or from bond issues, capital investments. It's not good operating practice to do new construction out of your operating accounts, and that's what we're doing right now.
Very good. Any other questions? It's been so long I forgot who's my first and my second.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'll move it to second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those are opposed? All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any business for the committee of the whole, Councilwoman Bell?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hodge?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Just a reminder for all of you to get your nominees in for the Charter Review Committee to Patty.
Ms. Wallman?
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Friday.
Ms. Scott?
No business, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor, not this time.
Mr. Weiss? Thank you all very much for coming. Meeting is adjourned.
Take your choice, please. It's my choice.